As college kids, we possess many freedoms that we lacked as children. After graduation, we are presented with a whole new world of opportunities and decisions. Now, we've all heard our grandparents talk about how their lives were so different during their day, and it makes you wonder, when exactly is it time to leave home? Now, in their time, they were leaving home at 14, 15, and married with families by the time they were 18, and that's not the case today. Personally, I believe that after you graduate high school and move on to college, you should live off campus or in the dorms because it is far more beneficial than living at home with your parents. First off, it gives you a lot more independence to make your own choices. Now, if you're an independent student who's supporting themselves, you're going to have to work in order to support your habits as well as your responsibilities. If you're a dependent student, you're going to have a cash flow from your parents assisting you with all your bills. As an independent student, you learn the lesson of budgeting. You learn how much money you have to spend on rent, how much money you have to spend on utilities, and then how much money you have to play with. As a student who has a cash flow from parents, the concept doesn't really register until later in life. And budgeting is by far one of the most important concepts you're going to have to learn in order to survive on your own. Next is the social circles. The dorm rooms are the watering hole where everybody meets up on campus. This is where you meet most of your new friends, most of which will be your friends for a lifetime. The dorm rooms is where you get invited to social events, you get invited to parties, all the Valentine's Day dances, the Halloween parties, all that is based in the dorms. Becoming involved is also another crucial part of living on campus or even off campus. They have flyers posted for groups, study groups, just clubs in general. And you miss out on that if you're living at home. Because basically you go to class, you go home, do your thing, and you go to work, and then you go back to home. You miss out on that social circle that you would be naturally integrated in living in the dorms or off campus as well. Time management. It's another crucial part of college life. Now, naturally, as a college kid, you don't have your parents there to monitor when you get up, when your meals are served, or when you do your homework. So you throw a job on top of that, and your social life is instantaneously cut in half. Time management is one way that you're going to survive college and not overwhelm yourself and burn out by first semester. First step to this is prioritizing. You have to decide what's important and what needs to get done first. By prioritizing your assignments per se, that lightens your workload most of the time with your homework, and it takes the pressure off deadlines because you have successfully sanctioned each assignment into intervals that are manageable for your schedule. Once you prioritize, that allows you time to play. Your social life is actually existent and doesn't become something that's been shoved in the closet and is never seen. As far as living off campus, I believe is probably the best thing you could do as far as integrating yourself into the world. As an independent student, you help prepare yourself for bigger changes. These changes include transferring schools. Most of you who attended two-year college plan to transfer 2 years later. Educational decisions such as changing majors. Most of educational majors have to do a student teaching course at some point in time in their career. You also, in order to do that, have to change locations, which is basically uprooting yourself from the city you've lived in to moving to a new city that you may have never even seen before. As an independent student and being on your own for a while, you have the experience of dealing with responsibilities. You know you have to pay the bills. You know you have to set time aside to do certain activities. Dependent students that have not had the chance to experience those responsibilities are basically thrown into these major situations and they panic and they have no idea how to handle it. Independent students have made these decisions on a daily basis from the time they graduated high school. So they naturally adjust easier to these situations and can make these decisions much easier. So what do? We live in a very, very, very dependent society. We're dependent on technology, we're dependent on convenience, and we're very dependent on instant gratification. This is why it is so important that we as individuals be as independent as possible. Now they say that these habits are instilled in us at a very young age, such as tying our shoes, letting us dress ourselves in the morning, even letting us walk across the street to school. These are the building blocks for independence. So wouldn't it make sense that the next step, after 18 years of living at home with your parents, you have the opportunity to leave and sort of experience it for yourself? So, as college students, I encourage you to break out, use your freshman year to decide what your personal limitations are, what you're capable of, what your boundaries are. I'm going to leave you with a quote by Terry Pratchett. Most species do their own evolving, making it up as they go along, which is the way nature intended. And all this is very natural and organic and in tune with the mysterious cycles of the cosmos, which believe that it's nothing like millions of years of really, really frustrating trial and error to give a species moral fiber and, in some cases, backbone. Any questions or comments? Clapping, keep clapping.
I got a question here.
What's that?
If you think about what we have here in Wyoming we have a pathway scholarship. So if you are a smart person, earns a lot of top honors and grades, you get your pathway scholarship to help sponsor you through community colleges or University of Wyoming. And that basically takes care of a lot of financial issues. But let's say a student has the option of going to University of Wyoming, having Hathaway, or going to Princeton, but has to take out loans, $50,000 a year or so. Should that student decide to play it safe, financially safe, locally, where they're from Wyoming originally, and go to University of Wyoming, or take a chance and go out to Princeton or Berkeley or Yale, be in the hole for a lot of money, but have the experience of actually getting out to big metropolitan areas?
I believe that depends on the student's motivation. If they can trust themselves to be motivated enough to say, okay, I'm going to go to Princeton and I'm going to succeed. Those students that go out there and like, oh, well, okay, I kind of want to go to Princeton, or I'm kind of interested in school and I think I want to further my education. I don't think unless you're set and you don't feel entirely confident and you're not fully motivated to really go out there and finish what you started, financials play a huge part in college. I mean, that's an obvious aspect of it. And I think that if he or she is willing to go out there and really try and succeed, then eventually they'll get a degree which they can pay those student loans back. But it is a gamble that most students, every student, regardless of what state you live in, take. And I think it bases mostly on students' motivation and how comfortable they feel with it. Anybody else?
I got one for you.
Yeah.
Do you think it is financially a wise choice to not live at home? Because, like, in my situation, I'm getting paid to live at home rather than staying in the dorms.
Yes. That goes back to financially. I think that if you're living at home, I do live here in Casper, I assume.
Yes.
You live here in Casper and you go to Casper College. Financially, it would make more sense. But then again, on top of financials, you also sacrifice what you're missing out on, what's going on here on campus. You miss out on a lot of events that are planned to happen, some that aren't planned to happen. And so that's kind of a decision that you have to make. Obviously, some people find it more comfortable to live at home. I just think that you sacrifice a lot more living at home than you do taking a chance and kind of taking a new scenic view on things. Anyone?
Another question.
Okay.
So, if we advocate for students to, let's say, move out of the parents' house, live in the dorm rooms, live in apartments and stuff, trying to get them exposed to other people, other cultures, just their surroundings beyond just being with parents. But by doing so, you're going to have some money to pay for apartments, have money to pay for dorms. They're going to have to get a job. And by getting a job, that means probably more time taken away from academics. You're working 10, 20 hours trying to get, that next paycheck from Menards or Walmart and such. Is the obligation to get jobs to pay for this increased social life worth it? Or could you just rather just stay at home, not have to pay for something else by taking all these jobs and study harder on your courses?
That falls into the time management course, or portion of my speech. When you're, fortunately or unfortunately, not all of us are grateful or fortunate enough, I guess, to be able to have someone pay for school. So naturally, some of us have no choice but to take on an occupation. If you manage your time effectively, yes, and in that case, you may have to sacrifice your social life, but that comes into play on what's important to you. The prioritizing. Is your academics more important than your social life? And is making a paycheck more important than your social life? And also, it comes in that whole trial and error thing. I mean, eventually you're going to take a semester where you work really hard at your job, and then you also take a ton of credit hours, and you find out that you can't do both. It's trial and error. As human beings, we are masters of trial and error. So, and I believe that that's just something you learn with time, but you have to have that independence and that motivation to do those things and to learn from those mistakes, which will eventually you'll learn later on down the road that maybe you can't work 40 hours a week and do 15 hours of school. Something's got to give. It's just what's more important to your goals in the long run. Anybody else?